Alright, legends, welcome along to Hellmouth Hotline. I'm your host, Rodney Stewart, and we're getting into Friday the 13th, the final chapter, and very, very far from it. But yes, I've said throughout all these movies, the first three, they all ended off in a way where it could have been the last movie. Like, it just seemed like while they were progressing through these movies, like even up to this point, I don't think they were fully 100% sure that it was going to be a franchise that kept going. So if every film there seems to be a way of leaving it at the end where it could finish the series or it could continue. They kind of leave a back door open, but in part three, not so much. But you're still thinking, okay, there might be something right there. But yes, this is actually pretty damn good, this movie. Nothing out of the ordinary going on here. It's a Jason movie. It is what it is. He's there killing people. That's what you sit down to watch these movies for. You just want to see what's going to happen in them. And yes, I kind of enjoyed this a little bit more once it starts getting going. But I do have to say, the getting there, getting started, takes a bit of time, I felt, anyway. But yes, released in 1984 on a budget of 2.6 million at the box office. It made 33 million back. So there are movies that made money, but at the time the slasher movies were kind of getting repetitive and boring. We're kind of losing steam, more or less. But yes, this one stars Kimberly Beck, Corey Feldman's in there, probably one of the youngest roles I've seen him playing at this point. Crispin Glover is in it, class, and Peter Barton. It's picking up immediately after the events of part 3. It pretty much follows a presumed dead Jason Voorhees who escapes from the morgue and returns to Crystal Lake to continue his killing spree. As I say, nothing out of the ordinary in these movies. It is what it is. Yes, Tommy Jarvis, Corey Feldman's character in this, he'd return, make further appearances in 2 sequels, and related media, establishing him as Jason's arch enemy. So you see, I'm starting to lose track in these films in a major way because I remember them, but I'm not a huge fan of them. Like, I think I've seen them on and off, bits and pieces. Never seen a full film in my childhood. But when I got up into my teenage years and into my early 20s, we ended up renting. We get into this thing where we started renting movies at the weekend. Me and a bunch of mates would sit around, have a couple of beer, watch a few movies. And horror movies was a big thing for us at that stage. But in the environment we were watching them in, we were having a bit of fun, friends hanging out, the movie was put on. And, chances are you would watch the film. It was about a 50-50 chance of you watching the film and not watching the film because you were just having a bit of fun at the same time. So it did come across these films quite a bit, but not to the extent where I fully remember them. Again, much like part 3, the film was originally supposed to be the final movie in the series. Mancuso Jr. wanted to conclude the series as he felt no one respected him for his producing work on it, regardless of how much the films earned at the box office. They were big earners, but they're not. Like, there's a lot of love for these movies, don't get me wrong. I know if you're listening to this podcast, you like horror, you're into these movies in particular if you're listening to this podcast, but they are not by any means great storytelling. It has to be said. It's a slasher, and it's pretty much, each movie is pretty much the exact same movie again, only with different people dying, really, at the end of the day, and how we get there and whatnot. But there is some things in them, I do have to say, that catch me out, particularly in the next movie, the 5th one. that's one I'd completely forgotten about. I actually watched that today, so I'm getting ahead of them for these podcasts. I'm genuinely surprised at the fifth one, but we'll get there when we get there. Mancuso Jr., also Frank Mancuso Jr., I should say, also wanting to do work on other projects. Paramount supported the decision to make the movie and kill Jason off at the end of it. They were aware of the declining popularity of slasher films. As a result, the film was marketed as the final chapter to ensure that they would make damn sure. You could imagine that meeting. Okay, right, another Jason movie, for goodness sake. Yes, make it. But this is the last one. It's never going to happen again. Make damn sure it's not going to happen again. We'll title it Friday the 13th, the final chapter. That way we can put it out there. We can market it as the finished film, the last film. We're never going to come back near this again. And yes, greenlight it, send it off. But of course, that's a money cow. They're going to come back to it. And they did come back to it. Makeup artist Tom Savini, who worked in the first film, returned because he wanted to help kill off Jason, who he helped create. It was originally scheduled to be released in October, but it was pushed up to April 13th, 1984. Upon release, the film grossed $33 million in the US on a budget of $2.6 million, making it the fourth most attended of the Friday the 13th series. So you know what's the figures is there. With each movie, they seem to drop in viewership as well, but money makers nonetheless. The film received generally negative reviews from the critics at the time of release. It has retrospectively come to be considered one of the best, if not the best, in the series. I'm just going by some of the notes I'm seeing online here for this bit. Despite being billed as the final film, its success prompted another sequel, Friday the 13th, A New Beginning, 1 year later. To say, cash cow as well. It's all about the money at the end of the day. As far as the movie goes itself, it's the night after the events at Higgins Haven in the last movie. Police are in a massive clean-up of the house and dead bodies and whatnot. And Jason's body is dead in the barn doorway where we seen him at the end of the last film. And he's taken to the morgue. And, of course, Jason being Jason, he's not going to stay dead for long. And he revives, escapes from the cold stories of the hospital, murdering the coroner with a hacksaw, which was pretty brutal, in all fairness. If you thought that he was going to basically just saw the guy's head off, but he goes about halfway, then he twists the head right around. Disgusting. Gets another nurse, kills her with a scalpel. And the following day, surprise, surprise, here's a group of teenagers driving to Crystal Lake for the weekend. We didn't see that coming in the movie. The group consists of Paul, his girlfriend Sam, Virgin Sarah, Doug, Awkward Jimmy, who I loved in this movie. That's class. I only really know Crispin Glover. Like, I've seen him in a few things, but the big jump out is George McFly, of course. So seeing him in something else, you're just interested to see how he's going to do it. And he was very, very good in this movie. There's another guy, Ted, and on the way the group comes across a girl, or the grave of Pamela Voorhees. And yes, of course you're going to start seeing this stuff in these movies. There's a hitchhiker at the side of the road who dies pretty swiftly in the movie, as Jason's making his way back to Crystal Lake from the hospital. The teenagers get to Crystal Lake and meet the neighbours, Trish Jarvis, her 12-year-old brother Tommy. There's a dog called Gordon in there as well. And while going for a walk the next day, the teens meet twin sisters Tina and Terry and go skinny dipping with them. That's another big thing about these movies as well, that there's a lot of, I have said it before in reviews, I'm not sure of it in this podcast so far. I've got quite a few episodes in the back catalogue for you to check out. But I genuinely think whenever the nudity starts popping up in movies, it's they're not having the confidence in the story they're selling, so they need to get a bit of bare flesh in there to sell the story. I genuinely think that about everything. Once I start seeing that happening, it's like, it's not like I don't appreciate a bit of bare female flesh. I'm a guy, of course, you enjoy seeing that sort of thing. But when it comes down to movies and the sort of stuff I like to watch, I would rather watch something that has the strength of story to make it good without having to throw that in there to, it's just basically to sell the movies at the end of the day. Trish and Tommy happen upon the lake where all this is going on, and Trish is invited to a party taking place that night, and she's trying to get out of there as quick as she can because little Tommy, 12 years old, she doesn't want him seeing this and whatnot. She's trying to look after her little brother, and they leave. Their car breaks down, of course that happens a lot, and Trish and Tommy are helped out by a young man named Rob Dyer, and he gets a car started and they take him back to his house, and he meets their mother and whatnot, and Tommy shows him several monster masks he made, and Robbie disappears off to go camping, so there's something about this guy. Later that night the teens begin the party, and this is where the movie started to really drag for me. Like, this just seemed to last. This is not a long movie, it's 91 minutes, but this whole house party sequence just seemed to drag and drag and drag, and I'm just like, at that point I could have easily jumped out of the movie and not watched it. I think the pacing of the film started to suffer quite a bit in this part of the movie. In the party, a jealous Sam sees Tina flirting with Paul and leaves. She goes out into the lake, skinny dipping once again. She gets into a little raft in the middle of the lake, just offshore slightly, and she gets impaled by a spear. Of course, her Jason pops up and takes her out. Guy Paul, he goes out to look for her, and he's harpooned in the groin, lifted up into the air. Fairly gruesome. I would say in this movie, like, I did notice the budget was. Now I'm not even going with details right here. Like, I'm not looking up the budget for the rest of the movies or the prior movies, but there definitely seemed to be a rise in the budget that was put into this movie. For me, I could see it on the screen with this one. At the house, Terry tries to leave the party early, but Jason stabs her with a spear before she can get on their bike. As I say, it's just, there's no surprises right here. You get what you get with these movies. He's taking everybody out one at a time. Just as it happens, it's just, it is what it is. Mrs. Jarvis arrives home next door and discovers that the power isn't working in the house, and while she's searching for her children and Gordon the dog, she's killed off screen. And yes, Trish and Tommy soon arrive, realise their mother's missing. She goes out to search for her and finds Rob's campsite. This is a guy that helped her earlier on in the movie, and it's revealed that Rob is actually the brother of Sandra Dyer from the second movie. Rob explains that Jason's still alive, and he's came to Crystal Lake to avenge his sister's death, and worried about Tommy's safety. Trish and Rob return to the house. So this Rob guy's in there for a bit of revenge, and it's a bit of a tie-in for somebody that's just come across this movie. You're going to have this little character put in there just to kind of fill you in on the history. That's more or less what this character's doing in this movie. After at the house again during the party, after sleeping with Tina, Jimmy goes downstairs to get a bottle of wine, and Jason pins his hand to the counter of a corkscrew before striking him in the face with a meat cleaver. Uh, the effects in this movie, fairly brutal, but I appreciate it that in these movies, up to this point at least, like a lot of the stuff's like it's all practical effects in there, and a lot of the stuff is left to the imagination. Like the murder scene earlier on, where the girl was getting onto the bike to leave, you don't actually see that happening. Like the camera pans past her, or moves past her towards the house during a storm, while she's about to get onto her bike, and then there's a flash of lightning which lights up the side of the house, and you see the shadow on the house of her getting impaled by Jason. So there's a lot left to the imagination in this film. I appreciate that. Even by today's standards, I think the more you see, the less scarier it is. That was a big thing that I learned whenever I was doing my research and learning. I do a little bit of filmmaking online once in a while. Like, there's not much right there. Like, if you want to check out on Vimeo, you can look up Coins Age Media. There's 6 little short films there, and also YouTube, Coins Age Media. Check out that YouTube channel. There's the little attempts I made at making some short films, but like completely self-taught. I learned by just reading books, magazines, tutorials online, that sort of thing. But one of the big things I did learn, if you're doing something like horror and whatnot, sometimes what you don't see is a lot scarier than what you do see. So this film plays into that quite a bit, and like all of them up to this point. If they do start to get gruesome, they'll leave a little bit for the imagination to work on. Yeah, Tina upstairs, she's looking out the window and finds that her sister's bike is still there. And of course, Jason pops up in there and throws her out the window. And that's actually a very, very well done visual effect in the movie, where she doesn't just hit the ground, she bounces off the roof of a car and blows out the windows. Yes. A stoned Ted is watching a stag film in the house on a projector, and he gets up to close the projector screen and he's stabbed in the head with a kitchen knife from the other side of it. Jason then goes upstairs where Doug and Sarah, where they have finished doing their dirty deed in the movie, and Doug's in the shower, and Jason takes him out by putting his head through a shower tile. Sarah screams when she finds the body. She tries to escape, but she gets the axe. Literally, she gets the axe as well. Trish, Rob, and Gordon, the dog, go next door to investigate and discover all the teens' bodies. They're all dead. The dog flees, and Jason takes out Rob very, very quickly in this movie. Like, he was set up to be the guy that was going to be the tool that was going to take Jason out in the movie. This was the guy coming back for revenge for his sister's death. So you're expecting a lot more out of this character, but you don't get it in this movie. He gets taken out very swiftly in the basement. Trish runs home, and she takes Rob's machete with her. She and little Tommy barricade themselves into the house, but of course that's not going to keep Jason away. He gets in there in short order, chases him into Tommy's room, and Trish, she lures him out of the house and escapes. But when she returns back to the house, she's devastated to learn that Tommy didn't run. This was the idea. I'm going to get rid of him. Whenever I get him out of the house, you run. But he stays. Tommy's still there. She senses Jason's right behind her, and she tries to fight him off with the machete. But she's overpowered, and little Tommy, having disguised himself to look like Jason as a child. There's little things like that in the movie. You think to yourself, okay, that makes sense why he's doing that. That's what Jason would look like as a kid, but how does he know that? Or is he just... Or no, sorry, I think I'm talking complete and utter nonsense at that. There was a sequence in the movie where Tommy came across newspaper clippings of Jason Voorhees and the whole history, so he does know what happened, so it does make perfect sense. So I do apologise for that. Yes, Tommy distracts Jason long enough for Trish to hit him with the machete, and but she's merely whacks off his mask. I don't know why. I just found that so funny that she just merely whacks off. Dirty boy, stop it. You need help. As Trish stands horrified, seeing Jason's deformed face, now you get the best view ever of what Jason actually looks like without the mask in this movie. Little Tommy takes the machete and strikes him in the side of the skull, causing him to collapse to the floor and split his head open upon impact, and then he slides down the machete and really severs the whole head, essentially. But when Tommy notices that Jason's fingers are still slightly moving, this is Jason Voorhees. You're not going to take a chance. You've got him down here. You're going to take him out at the end of the movie. This might have just been some nerves still active in Jason at this stage. But again, Tommy's not going to take any chances. He takes a machete. And yeah, he continues to whack at the body, screaming, "Die, die," while Trish is yelling out Tommy's name, "Stop it," blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the movie, at the hospital, you've got the police there, following her and whatnot, and what's happened, and the kid's going to be okay. He's going to need a bit of psychiatric help maybe, but everything's good. He's safe, you're safe, Jason's dead, and it's all good, essentially. So at the end, Tommy visits Trish, he embraces her, and then he gives a disturbing look while staring directly into the camera, and the movie closes out and credits. Very, very good. I enjoyed this movie a lot. Apart from that, again, the party sequence just seemed to last forever earlier on in the movie, but it is what it is when it gets going. It's fantastic. But again, we do have that end to the movie where, this could have been the end of the series, but Tommy's character, given that look into the camera at the very end, leaves that little idea in your head. What's going to happen to this kid now? Is he going to go insane and whatnot? But yeah, makes a lot more sense whenever I know now what happens in the next film, which was a genuine treat for me, because it, again, these films here, not epic storytelling. You get what you get. The first four in particular, it's your basic kids coming camping for a weekend, get taken out by the psychopath, and by the end of the movie, he gets taken out himself, or you think it's over and done with. It is what it is. So you're going into the fifth film today. I was going to leave it the next week because it's going to be a while before that podcast comes out. But I thought, okay, I'm up early. I'll check out the fifth one this morning and get caught up on it. A genuine treat for me. Usually, I'm either step for step with the story or know exactly where the story's going to go. And it's a very, very rare occasion where the story will actually trick me. And yes, I'll get lost completely and oh crap, that's where they're going. I love it. So that's what happened with the fifth one. So look forward to that one on Friday. But between now and then, you're going to get an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer on Monday. All been well. Same as this podcast here is over a day late at this point. But we'll get there. So until then, guys, I hope you're safe, whatever you're doing, and I'll talk to you all then. This has been a production of